What's going on? Back in the Bay Area, 49ers practiced Monday evening, or they practiced Monday afternoon. We're doing the show on Monday evening. A lot of interceptions today. Trey Lance threw 3 of them. Emmanuel Moseley was in on most of them. And we've got a lot to talk about because it's a quick week. 49ers played the Vikings on Saturday, flew back overnight, got here on Sunday, had that day off, and now practice on Monday. We'll be back out at the facility on Tuesday before the 49ers fly to Minnesota to Houston on Wednesday. Houston, definitely not a place that I think most people like to go in the middle of August. It's going to be swampy. It's going to be humid. There going to be some bugs there probably. Minnesota, probably a little bit more pleasant this time of the year. Nevertheless, it's an indoor stadium in Houston. It's going to be a quick game on Thursday. 49ers should play the starters for about a half, I would expect, in the dress rehearsal, and then we will have the long 17-day wait until the season opener, September 11th at Chicago. I'll help you pass that time as efficiently as possible, I promise. Through these videos, through my articles, you see one of them up on the screen. It's Emmanuel Moseley. Generates 2 takeaways in his first practice back from a hamstring strain. So E-Man was back out on that field, and I'll tell you what happened today. Trey Lance threw 3 interceptions. He's got 11 total throughout all the practices of training camp, plus the preseason. I mean, he didn't throw any in the preseason. I'm just saying, including everything that's happened this past month. And then today, which wasn't technically training camp anymore, right? Today was game week preparation for the Houston Texans. They call it the dress rehearsal, week 3 of the preseason, because teams actually will play that first half as if it were a regular season game. So the way that practice works is the starter gets almost all the reps. QB2 gets a few, and QB3 generally doesn't get very many. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. Only 3 attempts for Brock Purdy today, which is more than QB3 usually gets at these practices, but Nate Sudfeld definitely got more opportunities, so I'll talk about that later. Sudfeld is in the driver's seat for that QB2 spot, at least if we're using practice reps to gauge how that's going. But we're here to talk about Emmanuel Moseley coming back with a vengeance because he was out with that hamstring strain. Charvarius Ward, the 49ers' other top cornerback who they signed from Kansas City this offseason, has a groin strain. He's also been out of practice. He's expected back after this game against the Texans. So within short order, the 49ers should have both of their starting corners back. And they're going to love having that because their secondary has been feasting all of this training camp / preseason / first week of game planning of preseason. I can't say training camp technically anymore because that's over, but the 49ers now have 27 interceptions over the past month. 27. That's a lot. For comparison, last year, if you combine camp, preseason, and the regular season, the 49ers had only 23. So they already have 27, and they have at least 18 games to go, right, before the playoffs. I think the 49ers picked off 2 more passes in the playoffs last year, if I'm not mistaken. They got Dak Prescott. K'Wan Williams got Dak Prescott in the wild card game. They didn't pick off Aaron Rodgers in the divisional playoffs, but they did get Matt Stafford in, I think it might have been K'Wan Williams in the NFC Championship game. Was it him or was it Jimmy Ward? There was a tip ball near the goal line that the 49ers intercepted in the NFC Championship game. So I think they had 25 total interceptions between camp, preseason, regular season, and playoffs last season. They already have 27 this year. So there's definitely been an uptick. And I mentioned that Trey Lance threw 3 of them today. And our big, kind of discussion today will be, well, is this because Trey Lance is throwing too many picks? He's got 11 already, or is it because the 49ers defense is so strong? And we'll answer that question with nuance and discussion in just a little bit. But first, we have to focus on Emmanuel Moseley coming back with a vengeance. I mean, this guy has developed so impressively ever since the 49ers got him as an undrafted free agent, UDFA out of Tennessee. He wasn't drafted back in 2018. And his ascent, I think, was relatively fast because in 2019, the 49ers really needed Emmanuel Moseley. You go back to that season, Richard Sherman obviously played most of it, but Akello Witherspoon started out as the quarterback on the other side, and it was Emmanuel Moseley who really leapfrogged Witherspoon because, remember, they had Jason Verrett that year too, but he played 3 snaps against Pittsburgh. So the 49ers, like any team, were only as good as their weakest cornerback, right? And remember, they had some issues with Akello Witherspoon over the course of that 2019 season. And that's when Emmanuel Moseley stepped up, and Emmanuel Moseley helped tighten the screws on that 49ers defense. Ever since then, he's ascended. He played a lot of nickel early in his time with the 49ers, especially in 2020 when they needed that through injury issues to K'Wan Williams. And now I think it's clear cut that Moseley is their number 2 cornerback. Jason Verrett, they hope, is going to come back at some point this season. I keep on thinking that the PUP list is most likely for him to move into the regular season, which would mean the first 4 games at least he would be out. Once Verrett comes back, we can have a discussion about who's the number 2 corner behind Charvarius Ward. But if the 49ers do have a logjam, that would be a good problem to have, because Emmanuel Moseley's gotten stronger over his time. He's already at year 5? 2018 was his first year. So 18, 19, 20, 21. He's in year 5. My, how time flies. From undrafted free agent to now, he's on a contract year. It's the second year of a 2-year extension that Emmanuel Moseley signed before the 2021 season. So this guy's doing impressive stuff. And then let me tell you a little bit about practice today, where Lance threw those 3 interceptions. Well, first one intended for Deebo Samuel, picked off by Emmanuel Moseley. Second one, again intended for Deebo Samuel. Emmanuel Moseley reaches up, gets his finger on the ball. It's kind of an ugly pass, a little bit of a wobbler, but it was thrown hard with some velocity. And E-Man goes up, gets a little piece of it, deflects it to Talanoa Hufanga, who registered the interception. But probably the most notable part of practice, the most entertaining part of practice today was when Trey Lance tried E-Man deep. He went for Brandon Ayuk deep down the sideline, and it was blanket coverage. Emmanuel Moseley locked Brandon Ayuk up, and the pass was incomplete. At that point, Emmanuel Moseley yelled a few expletives that I can't repeat here, but let's just say that he was really excited to be back, and you could tell that he had some of that, those competitive juices were flowing. And it was all this pent-up, built-up energy from being out for a couple weeks, and the dog in him came out, and he yelled a few things that I can't repeat. And then maybe afterwards, we'll say an hour later, Emmanuel Moseley showed up at the press conference. He was up at the lectern. He talked. Nobody really asked him about what he yelled on the field. We're kind of talking just in terms of how excited he was to be back. So I think it was obvious what he yelled was just kind of all that energy coming out, the competitiveness coming out, because he was expressing that satisfaction to be back on the field. But when he got done with the presser, E-Man had one more thing to say, because he wanted to address the situation where he yelled on the field. And the media was right there, right in front of him when he yelled. And E-Man just says with a smile, sorry for cussing at you guys. And he walks off. So he was back into his more reserved mode, but he was obviously very self-aware of what had happened on the practice field. And, I just thought it was a great dichotomy today. And you've got to have that dog in you. You've got to have that competitive spirit, that a little bit of a yeller off the field. And Emmanuel Moseley, typically quiet guy in the locker room, had that on the practice field today. Trey Lance threw 3 picks I mentioned. So 1 to Moseley, 1 to Hufanga that Moseley tipped, and 1 to Fred Warner. So that's Emmanuel Moseley. He's going to be rejoined by Charvarius Ward probably next week. Jason Verrett, maybe week 5. We'll see if he's on PUP for those first 4 weeks. But boy, that 49ers secondary is the best that they've had in the Kyle Shanahan era. Every single coach or player that I ask about that will volunteer that information. They'll literally say, this is the best secondary that we've had here since 2017. Eric Armstead, for example, came back to team drills of practice today. I asked him about the secondary. I said, hey, can you evaluate the secondary for me? I didn't ask him if it was the best one. And first thing he said, well, I think it's obviously the best one that we've had since I've been here. And Armstead has been a 49er since 2016. So that's a lot of secondary, or 2015. Buckner came in 16. Armstead came from Oregon in 2015. So Armstead has seen a lot of 49ers secondaries. He's seen a really good one in 2019. He might have even seen a better one in 2020, but the pass rush wasn't as good. I mean, that was the big time year from Jason Verrett. And then last year's secondary wasn't nearly as good, but it finished up stronger, right, than it started, even though a game against the Rams was a little tough in the NFC Championship. I digress, though. This year's secondary looks like a major improvement over anything that the 49ers have fielded in the Shanahan-John Lynch era, and Emmanuel Moseley is a big part of it. Anyway, so 27 interceptions this month. That's partly against Trey Lance, who's thrown 11 of them. Some of them have come against Nate Sudfeld, some against Brock Purdy. And the 49ers have now victimized other teams' quarterbacks, the Packers and the Vikings, in both practice and the game for Minnesota. But, whenever we see a day like we did today, where Trey Lance threw 3 interceptions. He went 9 of 16. People rightfully start asking the question, is Trey Lance throwing a lot of picks because he's throwing a ton of bad passes, or is this 49ers defense to credit or blame, depending on which word you want to use? And let's be honest, the answer to this question, it's going to be one that fans and media and everybody that watches these practices and even players is going to debate over and over again. But the answer to this question is that both are at play. But I tend to think that the 49ers defense is truly something special, because I go back to this number. They have 27 interceptions over the past month, and it hasn't even been a full month yet, right? They started in late July, and it's only August 22nd. But that many picks, especially compared to last year, and the fact that they're picking everybody off, not just Trey Lance. Lance only has 11 of those 27. I mean, that tells me that this defense, the pass rush combined with the new look secondary, combined with what might be the best linebacking core in the league, I think you've got to give them some credit. Now, Trey hasn't been perfect, but nobody expected Trey to be perfect. It's his second NFL season, first one starting. He's got something like 500 total passes in his entire career, counting high school, North Dakota State, NFL. This is probably a piece of evidence that points in the favor of the 49ers defense. Trey Lance didn't throw a single interception in college. 28 touchdowns, no interceptions in that 2019 season at North Dakota State. So he was particularly good about taking care of the football. I don't care what level you're at, not throwing a single pick is impressive. And obviously he's thrown a lot more here, but he didn't throw any in limited action against the Packers, right? And we're going to get to see him probably for a full half against Houston coming up this week. So we'll get to know if Trey Lance makes mistakes at the NFL level. The sample size is probably still a little bit too small. He threw that one pick, if I remember correctly, against Arizona. Was that his first throw? It might have been his first throw at the NFL. Well, not at the NFL level, but as a starter at the NFL level, because he played the half against the Seahawks. That ball sailed on him against the Cardinals. But in retrospect, we know that Trey Lance was playing with a chipped finger, right? He was playing with that injury he suffered this week last year against the Las Vegas Raiders. And because that was still early in the season, the finger was obviously still affecting him. So, you can't really say that was a pick that you can expect Trey Lance to throw over and over again. Now, though, he's healthy, and we're getting to see what he's doing in practice against this 49ers defense. And I will say that today, and, this has been the course throughout a lot of camp, he was up and down, right? There would be a bad day, there'd be a good day. And on the good days, it seemed that Trey Lance was untouchable. He was accurate. He was hitting the deep outs. He was hitting the intermediate routes. On the days where he is off, where he's not quite as sharp, Trey does miss high. There are high misses even over the middle. It's not just on the deep outs. And that's where the 2 picks came today. 2 higher throws over the middle, including that one that was tipped by Emmanuel Moseley into Talanoa Hufanga's hands. So, I don't think that the accuracy is perfect for Trey Lance, but I mean, this is one thing that I chart, and this is why we chart it. So these are the overall splits, and you can see the interception counter here on the right from 49ers training camp. But since I was able to chart every single practice, I started to notice some patterns and trends. And one thing was that over the first week, Trey wasn't good at all. He completed only 48% of his passes. But since the first week of camp, Trey Lance in practice has completed 58 to 59% of his passes. There's been an uptick of over 10 points, which is significant. The interception rate has also gone down from 4.5% to 2.5%. If you look early on here, this is when he threw a good deal of his picks. Day 2, there was one. Day 3, there was one. Day 4, there was one. Day 5, there was one. So that was 4 straight days of interceptions for Trey Lance. And then he started throwing way fewer picks in the middle of camp. And finally, we're not in camp anymore, but the 49ers were installing the Texans game plan, and he threw 3 today, but that's not training camp, so I don't have it on the log. Maybe I'll add it as like a bonus add to the log. But I think, therein lies an important note. Trey Lance is not working with a training camp type of script anymore. They are now installing an actual game plan. There's a major, major difference between what the 49ers were doing in camp and what they're doing this week. We've changed modes to game plan installation, which in my opinion is really, really important to take note, because this is going to be fun to watch. We're going to see Trey as the QB1 starting quarterback leading the 49ers into Houston. It's obviously not going to be a 60-minute game. They're going to be playing 30 minutes with the starters, but we're going to see how Kyle Shanahan game plans for Trey Lance. We're going to see how Trey Lance adapts to the game plan and how he implements it on the field. Remember at this time last year, this week last year, the 49ers were gearing up to play the Raiders. Garoppolo was QB1, Lance was QB2. What did they do in practice? They rotated Lance and Garoppolo. It was absolutely fascinating. One guy would be in, then, they'd work on the play clock in exchange. Another guy would replace him. So Garoppolo in for a play, Lance in for 2, Garoppolo in for 3. It was fascinating stuff. The 49ers wanted to mix and match the quarterback position. They ended up doing the same thing in the game against the Raiders, if you remember, especially that first touchdown drive. That was something, right, with both Garoppolo and Lance there. And it was something that if you go back and look at what Kyle Shanahan talked about over the course of that August, he really wanted to do this. He really wanted to use positional versatility at quarterback, just like he already does at other positions like receiver and running back. And we even saw the strategy extend into the regular season. First drive, I guess the first drive actually was a fumble technically, right? Mack and Garoppolo had the cough up there, but first time the 49ers didn't fumble the opening snap. They moved it right down the field with Jimmy Garoppolo, but it was Trey Lance who threw the touchdown. Then obviously they brought Lance in against the Packers a couple weeks after that at the end of the first half to run it in. But the issue was the reason that the 49ers veered away from the path of giving Lance more run that they practiced during this week and practice last year is because he chipped his finger in this week 3 game against the Raiders. And we didn't know at the time how much that injury was affecting Trey Lance's ability to grip the ball and do all that. But in retrospect, we do know that it was a significantly compromising injury. And because of that, Shanahan started to stray away from a 2 QB plan. And then he just figured, I can't mess up this rhythm. And the offense was playing well under Garoppolo last year. There were thoughts, it resurfaced again after Jimmy tore the ligament in his thumb, right, in week 16 at Tennessee. So you had a really good stretch of play from Jimmy in the middle of the season, moving toward the end. Then he gets hurt against Tennessee. I believe, was it Bud Dupree, I believe, beat Tom Compton, threw him to the ground. Can't remember. I think it was Dupree that got him. I do remember it was Randy Gregory that got him the second time against Dallas in the wild card game. So either way, I mean, the 49ers had some issues along the offensive line last year that they might still have this season. Garoppolo got hurt twice. In between injuries 1 and 2 is when he came back from the first one. And there was talk before the week 18 game against the Rams that Lance might play. Everybody was on pins and needles to see what they'd do. And Shanahan ended up just sticking with Garoppolo, and it was a good thing the 49ers did because they ended up beating the Rams and then moving to the playoffs. But anyway, that's just a blast to the past, right? We're just looking back to this week last year, dress rehearsal week. We saw both Lance and Garoppolo. Now this year, it's obviously only Trey Lance working with the 49ers. Didn't even see Jimmy at the facility today because the 49ers practiced later because that's just how the sports science schedule works. They've done it twice now. Late game, preseason game means practice 2 days later after the day off starts at 1:45 p.m. instead of the usual 10:25 a.m. that it's going to start at tomorrow. Gives the muscles a few extra hours to recover from the game. And now the 49ers, they go through 2 quick light practices, no pads on today. I doubt there'll be pads on tomorrow here in game prep week. And then they fly out to Houston on Wednesday. All right. I promised I'd talk about Brock Purdy. Only 3 pass attempts today. And, I wrote about this yesterday, so maybe we could put this up on the screen. By the way, if you're just joining, check out the chat section because that's where the link to this piece on Emmanuel Moseley is. I wrote this article about Emmanuel Moseley, and now we will click through and check out the one yesterday about Brock Purdy because we're talking about Brock Purdy now, so we don't need Emmanuel Moseley on the screen. There he is, number 14, the rookie out of Iowa State, Brock Purdy. The headline that we put there, just for obvious reasons, because Shanahan has said that it's not determined, is Nate Sudfeld and Brock Purdy are both impressing the 49ers. So who will be QB2? Now, if you actually read the piece, and I'm going to put this piece in the chat section for you so you can take this one. I write that it's very apparent based on the tea leaves and the clues that we've seen so far at practice and in games that Brock Purdy or Nate Sudfeld is the favorite for the QB2 job. There's the fact that the 49ers gave him a fully guaranteed contract, $2 million fully guaranteed this offseason. That meant that they're really counting on him to be QB2. But B, even after they acquired Brock Purdy, and Purdy has looked good. I mean, they've both impressed the 49ers, as you can tell in that headline. Even after that acquisition, we've seen the rep count at practice as camp evolved, and now as game prep week starts, we've seen the rep count heavily favor Nate Sudfeld. So unless Shanahan's going to pull a fast one at the last minute, maybe the conspiracy theorists will say, oh, well, maybe he's trying to hide Brock Purdy. Well, he didn't do a good job hiding him against the Vikings on Saturday, but maybe he's trying to hide him at practice to make it seem that he's, just QB3, so that if you waive him, nobody poaches him. But just based on that entire flow, if we just look at it on face value, and you look at the contractual information, the $2 million fully guaranteed for Sudfeld at face value, well, I think that we are looking at Nate Sudfeld QB2 and then Brock Purdy QB3. Now, the real question to me is, the 49ers definitely want to keep Brock Purdy in the building, but can they squeeze him through, sneak him through to the practice squad? Today, Nick Mullins was traded from the Raiders to the Vikings, who obviously threw up in their mouths watching Kellen Mond against the 49ers, but Mullins was traded for a 7th-round pick. So if Mullins can command a 7th-round pick, that, might make you think that the chances of somebody like Brock Purdy, who reminds people of Nick Mullins, but probably has more physically, right, is a little bit more impressive physically, well, that might mean that a team could swoop Brock Purdy if you waive him. All 31 other teams are going to have a chance to claim him if the 49ers waive him before he could re-sign with their practice squad. So it could be a really tough decision for the 49ers. You have to keep everything in perspective. A lot of Purdy's action, yes, has come against second stringers in the second half, but third stringers, I guess I should say, in the second half. But Shanahan did give them equal reps in the first half of this game against Minnesota. Remember, he alternated series, 2 on, 2 off, 2 on, 2 off. And because of that, Brock Purdy was actually able to face a lot of the 2s and maybe a couple 1s in that game against Minnesota. He's executed 2 very successful 2-minute drives at the end of halves against the Packers and the Vikings. Clock management's on point. Accuracy on the move is on point. And I asked Shanahan about it. This is the most polished field command, clock management rookie that you've coached with the 49ers. And Shanahan seemed to agree with the notion when I asked him that on Sunday. And he said, well, it's because Brock has been a 4-year starter at the Big 12 level with Iowa State. And that's not insignificant. He's not just some inexperienced guy that's come into the NFL. He's got some polish, and that might be intriguing to the rest of the league now that they've seen him. So what's the downside of carrying Purdy on the 53-man roster? Well, I'll show you guys what the downside would be, because the 49ers have a crowded situation, and we need to talk about this. This is, by the way, this is the injury report that I have on my 90-man roster spreadsheet. I'm going to make this a lot wider for you all to see, and I can make it bigger too. Maybe I can make my face to see. I like my face in the screen. Why not? All right, now you can see it. This is the full thing. I'm going to put this in the chat section. This is the 49ers 90-man roster, or it's 85 now, and they've got to cut this down to 80 tomorrow. A week after tomorrow, they're going to have to cut from 85 or from 80 down to 53. The left side, the side that's in gold, is a 53-man roster projection. The right side that's in red is everybody. So the whole picture is the 85-man roster. Just the left half is the 53-man roster. Right now, I project Purdy to be on the practice squad. But if you move Purdy to the active roster, we'll do that right now. Top row, move him over here. Boom, he's there. My roster counter's gone up to 54. All of a sudden, the 49ers are over the limit. So the question is, how are they going to get under the limit if they have Brock Purdy on the 53-man roster? Well, go through the position groups. You can carry only 4 running backs. I definitely don't think the 49ers want to do that. I mean, that's already going to be a tough decision as it is, right? You've got Mitchell, Wilson, Sermon, Ty Davis-Price, JaMychal Hasty, Jordan Mason. You've got a whole heck of a lot of running backs, and I think they want to carry 5, including Kyle Juszczyk. You can skimp on receivers, but if you do that, then Malik Turner doesn't make the team. And Malik Turner is one of your better special teams players. He caused the strip, that fumble as the up man. He's played good gunner in the past. I don't think there's a way that Malik Turner doesn't make the team, in fact, so you can't do that. You could maybe skimp on the tight ends. You've got Kittle, you got Werner, you got Dwelly, you've got Croft. Maybe somebody like Croft goes to the practice squad. So if that's the case, you could erase Croft right here and move him over, and you're back at 53. But for now, let's keep Croft in. And let's see what I just moved Purdy. I've got to redo that. Let's redo Purdy back to the 53. All right, what about the offensive line? See, I already skimped on the offensive line. I've got 8 here. Normally a team will take 9. And I know a lot of you are big Jason Poe fans. So is Poe going to be that 9th? Maybe. But if Poe is the 9th, and you move him here into a backup guard spot, and Purdy's on the team, then all of a sudden you got 55. So now we got to cut 2 players. Well, I have the 49ers carrying 11 defensive linemen. Does this mean that they carry only 10? Maybe, but who do they cut? Kerry Hyder, Hassan Ridgeway, Kamoko Toure, Jordan Willis, who was really good against the Vikings. They're not cutting Kevin Givens. In fact, I should put Kevin Givens higher up on the pecking order here. I have him behind Kerry Hyder. I'll put Kerry Hyder here on the 3rd string. But, I mean, I think you get the point, though, right? I think you could see that the 49ers would have very, very tough decisions to make. So they're going to have to sacrifice somebody, especially if they do carry Purdy on the 53-man roster. Linebacker, for special teams purposes, you almost certainly have to have 5. The 5th right now, I think the heavy favorite is Demetrius Flanagan-Foles. I think you try to sneak these guys onto the practice squad. Marcelino McCrary Ball, all of the above. Secondary, if you want to, you could divide this up into corners and safeties. I'm going to consider it all one group. There's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 defensive backs on this roster. And that doesn't include Quantrez Knight. And I know people love Quantrez Knight. It doesn't include Dante Johnson. But Dante Johnson in the past, the 49ers have played that practice squad yo-yo game back and forth with him. So he probably starts there. They picked up Deshaun Gibson today. I talked about it a little earlier. He was a Pro Bowler back in 2014. Interesting thing about Gibson, he was a Pro Bowler for the Cleveland Browns in 2014. So he's 32 now. Remember, 2014 is the season that Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator in Cleveland. So he and Gibson have overlapped. And guess who else was in Cleveland that year as a rookie? K'Wan Williams. So Gibson was a Pro Bowler in the secondary that K'Wan Williams was a rookie Nickelback starter in Cleveland in 2014. Why is that significant? Well, if you go back to the depth chart, the 49ers will likely have a rookie Nickelback starter here in 2022 in Samuel Womack. Today, I thought it was cool. We saw Womack, Deommodore Lenoir, and Quantrez Knight, the 3 Nickelbacks that I have listed here, all working with D'Amico Ryans before the team period of practice. Now, remember, D'Amico, former All-Pro linebacker for the Houston Texans and then for the Philadelphia Eagles. So what were they doing working with a former linebacker? Well, nickel is such an intriguing position because so much of what you're doing, it's not outside cornerback. You're playing closer to the line of scrimmage, closer to the box, right? So it's actually really, really important to have legitimate linebacker-like skills. And I asked D'Amico Ryans about it, and I'm going to read you his answer. This comes from the Moseley article that I posted a little bit earlier. This is what D'Amico said when I asked him about, what kind of linebacker traits do you need as a nickelback, even though you're smaller, given where you're aligned, after I saw him working with Womack, Lenoir, and Quantrez Knight. And this is what D'Amico said. With a nickelback position, it's really evolved over the past few years, but that position now, it's almost like you're a starting linebacker. So with that nickel position, you have to be able to fit the run like a linebacker. But the passing, where it changes when it comes to third down pass coverage, those guys are athletic and sticky enough to play man coverage and defend the passes. But everything first and second down wise, they're getting everything that linebackers get, whether it's using their hands versus blockers, whether it's blitzing, the angles they need to take in blitzing. So essentially, to be a nickelback at the NFL level, you've got to be the ultimate Swiss Army knife. You have to be extremely versatile, and you also have to be quick enough to cover the receivers. So it's defending the run, being able to throw your body in there, but maintaining quickness to cover receivers. So the way that nickels are able to do this is by being sneaky, right? Because you can't be too big if you're going to cover the slot guys, the receivers. Cooper Kupp plays out of the slot over 60% of the time. So since, if that size needs to be in line for the short area quickness, you're going to get eaten alive by blockers if you're just playing it mano a mano, right? You just can't go one-on-one. You got to be able to sneak around guys, which is why K'Wan Williams perfected the shark blitz. And we saw the 49ers try to go with that with Samuel Womack this past weekend against the Minnesota Vikings. They called 2 shark blitzes for Samuel Womack, trying to get after the quarterback unexpectedly, right from that technically second level. He's not on the defensive line, but he snuck up there to the line of scrimmage. And one of the blitzes yielded an interception. Now you give more credit to Drake Jackson. He fell down on the rep, got back up, forced the pressure. George Odom had the pick, and Kellen Mond obviously didn't really excite the Vikings too much. They just picked up Nick Mullins today, but you saw it semi-effective from Samuel Womack, right? I asked Amico about the blitz today, and he said, yeah, he's still got something to work on, but it was a good start. And I think that's a good answer because K'Wan Williams was a hell of a blitzer. K'Wan Williams might have been the best in the league blitzing from that nickelback position. Womack might already be a better cover nickel corner than K'Wan Williams. The long arms, right? He's got the 32-inch arms and, that short area quickness. I mean, and he's younger. So K'Wan was probably starting to decline in that regard. But K'Wan was so good at maneuvering, slipping through the box, blitzing. That's where Samuel Womack is going to have to learn and develop in his game. So anyway, all this insight from D'Amico Ryans. He talked about Drake Jackson falling down, getting up as well. That's all in this piece right here. And the piece is mainly about Emmanuel Moseley, who, those of you just joining, he blanketed Brandon Ayuk down the sideline today. And after the pass from Trey Lance fell incomplete, it was just expletives coming out of Emmanuel Moseley's mouth. He was pumped up. He was yelling. I can't repeat what he said, but then he comes up on the press conference podium, and after he's done answering questions, Emmanuel says, sorry for cussing at you guys. And then he just bolts away with that smile on his face. If those of you who don't know E-Man, quiet guy, funny guy, though's got a little bit of a wry sense of humor. And he just let that dog out on the field today, which I thought was really neat to see from up close when he was yelling. So he apologized for yelling. I was like, you don't have to be sorry to anybody. I mean, I'm just watching this practice from the field, from the front row, essentially. And I just saw a whole lot of emotion. I saw a guy who'd been out for 2 weeks with a hamstring strain who was back out on that practice field, excited to get back after it. And he was all over Brandon Ayuk today. He was all over Deebo Samuel today. And I guess by extension, he was all over Trey Lance today. Again, Trey Lance, 3 picks. Moseley generated 2 of them, a pick of his own and a tip to Talanoa Hufanga. Oh boy, I've been talking for a while. That's 32 minutes of straight talking for me. That's crazy. I haven't even been looking at the chat section, so sorry if I missed anything. I will try to scroll back through some of it here in a second. I wish I had some water for myself, but it was a travel day for me today. I was in the mountains, so I had to come back to the Bay Area and saw practice, and I just have a lot of energy for some reason. It must be the In-N-Out burger. Double, no onions, protein style, and a vanilla shake. That's the order. Protein style is important because I'm training right now, getting ready for another open water race this fall. I have won my last 2, so it's good. And I, want to make it 3 in a row. You want to three-peat this. So this one's going to be in Shaver Lake, and it's going to be coming up in September. So I'm excited for it, but you have to go with the protein style In-N-Out. Can't, weigh down the gut too much. Have to be in the Bay again tomorrow at Coyote Point in the morning before I head down to the 49ers facility. I had a burrito for lunch, and burritos are really nutritious meals, especially if you're swimming a lot. It really replenishes, a lot of those carbs. But anyway, have I gone through all the text titles? Yeah. We talked about Lance's picks. We talked about the fact that I think the 49ers defense really gets a lot of credit for these. This is going to be a hell of a unit this year. They have 27 interceptions over the past month. So that's including training camp, that's including preseason, the 2 games, and that's including this practice where they had 3, which is no longer training camp. Last year, all season, that includes the playoffs, the regular season, 49ers had only 25, and they only had 9 in the regular season. So they already have more now than they did all of last season, including the playoffs. And they're still, last year they played 20 games. There's still at least 18 games to go, counting this one at Houston on Tuesday. So it's going to be fun stuff. All right, I got carried away again. Everybody make sure you subscribe to The Athletic. Like this video and subscribe to this channel. Why don't everybody stop and do that right now? Like seriously, hit the like button, not that hard. If I can talk for 35 minutes the way that I just did, you can hit the like button for 1 second, so just do that right now. And I'm on Twitter and I'm on Instagram. The handle's the same. See, Lombardi himself. That's me. So go ahead and check that out. But here, let's go back to some of these questions. Maybe I might not put any up on the screen, but I'm just going to see what people are saying today to answer some. Flav asks, thanks, Flav. I appreciate it. Yeah, here. Purdy looks more NFL ready in 2 preseason games than Trey has in a year. No way the 49ers don't keep him or Jimmy. Need one natural quarterback capable of throwing with accuracy and touch on this roster, right? Yeah, well, they for sure want to keep Purdy on at least the practice squad. And that's part of the roster. You could call that guy up at any time. You could flex him up at any time. The risk is sneaking him onto the practice squad if he's impressed the league. And if you waive him, all 31 other teams will have a chance to put in a claim. So will you be able to sneak him onto the practice squad is the big question to me. It's not QB1 or 2, not QB2 right now. Obviously not 1 at this point, but it's a situation of how many quarterbacks do you carry on the roster? God, the comment section is blowing up today. Gotta love it. Hell yeah, man of the Sierras. I like it. So anyway, how's everybody doing? Why don't we just like sit back and chill for a bit? I love the size of the show today. So everybody make sure you subscribe to The Athletic. The article is, I think, $1 a month right now to subscribe, and you'll see. If you're not a member yet, you'll see. We got it covered really deeply. And of course, I've got a whole lot of other stuff here. I've got the roster breakdown. Hopefully this helps you understand where the 49ers are in terms of the roster. And you've got your 49ers quarterbacks at 2022 training camp. But big show tonight. I think people are getting excited for the season opener on Thursday. Yesterday, I wrote about the 49ers running backs a little bit more in case you're wondering about that. If I have to say anything about Trey Sermon, he's still getting most of the first team reps at these practices, which is interesting to me. Now with running backs, you could hide guys a little bit more because you don't run them as much with the ones. But at some point, I think the 49ers need to rotate all of these backs in with the ones. And Sermon hasn't even had a chance to really run behind the actual ones, right? Because the 49ers haven't played like Trent Williams and stuff in the preseason. So I think this week you're going to see that happen against Houston. They won't have McGlinchey because he's still out with the knee. They'll have McKivitz in at right tackle, but the other ones should be in there. And, just for my own selfish viewership and analysis purposes, I hope that they while all the first teamers are in there along the offensive line, I hope that Sermon gets a chance to run behind them, that Elijah Mitchell's not going to play, but that Ty Davis Price gets a chance, that Jordan Mason gets a chance, that Jeff Wilson, if he plays, gets a chance. I want to see all these guys rotate in behind the ones so we get a better gauge of who's who at that running back position, because we can have all these debates about Sermon doesn't look good and Jordan Mason looks better. But the truth is that Jordan Mason's running against third stringers at the end of the game. And Sermon, is in there behind, against better defenders behind an offensive line that hasn't been playing all its starters. That's, and I think that might be part of the reason why he's looked so much worse in games than where Kyle Shanahan puts him at practice, right? We're seeing him with a lot of those first team reps. I don't know. At the end of the day, I'm not going to pretend like I know more than I do. I just add the context that's there. And I hope that we get something that helps us further contextualize this on Thursday. And that's what the dress rehearsal is all about. But I do know that Sermon has not been the most popular fellow on social media as of late. Oh my God. This is a crazy question. How about this? If San Francisco doesn't hit 5 wins this season, what would that do to Kyle's legacy? Well, that'd be ugly. You never know. Injury catastrophe can hit. It did in 2020, and they won 6. But with this roster, you definitely want to win more than 5. That's you don't talk about legacies until a guy is done. And regardless of what happens this year, Kyle Shanahan would have to be embroiled in a scandal to not coach the 49ers beyond this season into 2023. So we're not going to be talking about Kyle's legacy until far after he's done. So I don't think it would do anything to Kyle's legacy right now. Your legacies are based on the totality of a coach's resume. Man, watching some of those comments pile in. All right, guys, cool. 40 minutes sounds like a fun show. If you guys have any good questions, any more right now, maybe I'll get to some of the more recent ones. Why do I keep pointing out that Mason is running against third stringers? Because he is. I mean, it's just a fact. Mason's yardage is coming against third string. It doesn't mean that he's a worse back, but he is. So we need to see him running more against the first stringers. I think Kyle's going to want to see that. Today he came in there against the first string. Today they didn't have pads on those, so nobody can tell anything. But I mean, you can't omit important context, and the important context is who's running with what team, right? So I hope for everybody's sake that we get to see all the running backs rotate in with that first team coming up. A lot. Mike asked, "What's your take on Jennings in camp and preseason? Do you think wide receiver 3 will be a mix of guys?" Yeah. So wide receiver 3, they're going to run this skill set wise. If they want the bigger slot in there, that's Juwan Jennings, right? 6'3". He could. I mean, he's got the size. He can block. He pisses guys off. The other wide receiver 3 is Danny Gray. He's a completely different type of receiver. He's fast. I mean, he doesn't have as much size as Juwan Jennings. He's a burner. And then you have Ray McLeod, who's more of a gadget type. All of these guys are third wide receivers. McLeod, Danny Gray, Juwan Jennings. And it depends on what the offense needs to happen. So if you want the big slot, you're going to go Juwan. If you're going to want blow the top off the defense, you're going to throw Danny Gray out there. And if you're going to go, with more of the gadget type of attack, then you're going to go Ray McLeod. They're deep enough between those guys and then Debo and Ayuk. We may see some 4 wide sets this year. And I think that'd be pretty cool. It's an evolution of Kyle Shanahan's offense where, we see the big slot a lot because that's important for the outside zone and for blocking the run game. But the field stretcher, Danny Gray, the guy that could stretch the field with his speed, that's going to be a very, very welcome addition to this 49ers offense because we've already seen it. You saw the first game where they just aired it out deep to Danny Gray. And, Trey got rid of that ball in 2.5 seconds. The pass protection wasn't great, but if Gray gets open in 2.5 seconds on a go ball, who cares about the pass protection at that point? As long as he's got the interior protected, the tackles can get beat if the quarterback can get it off in 2.5 seconds. As long as the tackles offers some kind of resistance, that's enough. Now, you can't expect Danny Gray to get open on go routes in 2.5 seconds on every down, but it worked in the preseason against the Packers. So the pass protection still has to be better for the 49ers, which is why Mick Kibitz at right tackle and McGlinchey being hurt right now is a big concern for the 49ers as we speak. K-Dubsville needs a 49ers theme name for his fantasy team. Why doesn't everybody give him some ideas in the comment section? I'll let you guys be creative with this. I've been talking for 43 straight minutes, so how about some good ones? Okay, yeah, Mr. Corey, I'll answer your question. I keep pointing out that Mason being undrafted is irrelevant. I don't care where anybody was drafted. I don't care where Sermon was drafted. I don't care where Mitchell was drafted. I don't care where Jordan Mason was drafted. That the draft or not drafted, the draft or the lack thereof for all these guys was what? It's August 22nd, was 4 months ago. It doesn't. Nobody gives a. I'm not going to say bad language on here in case there's kids watching, but nobody cares about where people were drafted at this point. So you're going to be slotted in based on where the staff perceives your ability to be. Now, did Mason start from a lower rung because he was undrafted? Maybe. But that's what this Thursday is all about. Mason, he's been working against the third stringers. I want to see him work against the first stringers. I want to see and I want to know, and I think Shanahan wants to know exactly what he has. But I just say the truth. I see rushing production, and I ask, okay, what was the blocking like? What was the defense like? And so far for Jordan Mason, most of those runs have come against third stringers, and most for Trey Sermon have come against first stringers. It's just the way that it is. I mean, it's just that you can't, dodge the truth. Sorry if you like Jordan Mason and you think that, they should cut Trey Sermon right now. That's just not going to happen. We're going to have to wait on Thursday to see the next development in that running back decision, but it's going to be a really tough decision for the 49ers to make because they've got a lot of good backs. And I'm on record saying this over and over. They would want to keep as many backs as possible because the injuries have killed them at that position over the course of the Shanahan era. It's just a position that gets depleted year in and year out. And I think it's really important for the 49ers to try to stay as deep as possible there, but you can't carry them all. You try to sneak as many to the practice squad as you can, but I think 5 is the max on a deep roster. All right. So are you guys, is K-Dubsville happy with the names? Trey's company. I'm looking at some of the names. The Mitchell Bros. That's funny. Hopefully you got some good ideas. I'm sure everybody here or most people here play fantasy football. I actually don't. So please don't invite me to your fantasy league. I get a lot of invitations every year. I don't believe in fantasy football. I know that might seem crazy to all of you, but I think that it twists the nature of the game. I'm more about two teams lining up against each other. I don't want to be sitting there, rooting for some guy to get 52 passing yards or 52 receiving yards, some third wide receiver. I want to watch the two. It's more pure when I just watch two teams trying to win a football game against each other. I don't think that the fantasy stats in general really reflect the stats that win you football games. I don't care about raw yardage. I care about efficiency. Now, you could probably get me on board if you had a fantasy league where you had more advanced stats, some efficiency in there. Maybe I would think about it, but I'm too busy to be worried about other teams' players everywhere. I'm so locked into the 49ers right now. This is the fun part of the year. That's why I keep this roster, because you really get to see what the 49ers are going to do. Anyway, cut down day tomorrow, 85-80 tomorrow on this roster up on the screen. So be sure to follow along for that. And then following that, we have the game against the Houston Texans. So we'll be watching 49ers Texans on Thursday. And then cut down is 80-53 on Tuesday, August 30th. So a lot of our questions will be answered then. So subscribe to The Athletic, like this video, and subscribe to this channel. Do it right now. Follow along on Twitter and Instagram. It was a fun show tonight. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Really appreciate everybody. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye now.